my name is Emma and today I am talking about my all-time favorite series. This video has given me a lot of anxiety, which is why it has taken me 3 years to film it. I don't know if you've noticed, I am not one of those booktubers that makes a lot of favorite videos. I know there's a ton out there and everyone has a couple of favorites videos, but the only one I've ever really done that's book related is my favorites of 2015, and I plan on doing one for 2016. So I'm good at like the yearly ones, but like all times and whatnot, not my thing. I have been putting off this video for so long because you could probably ask me what my top 10 favorite series were in like a week and the answers would probably change a little bit. So while this video is my top 10 favorite series of all time, a lot of these could possibly switch out for spaces. I'm just going to be putting them in order of how I feel currently, but honestly, other than the top 3, 4, or 5, the rest of them could probably kind of fit anywhere into those rankings. So I'm just not good at picking favorites and whatnot and picking an exact place on how I feel about them in my heart, but I did want to make a video just talking about all of these series that I love so much, and I hope you guys enjoy it. If you would like to see more favorite videos, like favorite first books in a series, favorite sequels, favorite series conclusions, favorite dystopians, just any kind of favorite video, if that's something you're interested in seeing from me, let me know exactly which kind of favorite video you would like, whether it was one that I just mentioned or a totally different one. I would just like to know. So let us get on with the favorites. At number 9, we have the Twilight series by Stephenie Meyer. I read Twilight back in middle school when it was really popular. I was one of the Twihards, and it was just a great experience to read this book so captured in the movie franchise and the fandom at that point. A lot of people hate Twilight, and I even hated Twilight for a significant point in my life. Like, there was a few years in my life where all I did was make fun of Twilight, and I'm really ashamed of it. But after rereading it in 2014, I think, I just completely fell in love with this series. So many people detest this book, and I understand it is another very flawed book. It is not high quality literature. I love this book purely for its entertainment purposes and my attachment to the characters and the story. But even if Twilight is like the bane of your existence, there is no way that YA would be what it is today with all of the success it has and all of the amazing authors we have and the entirety of all of these stories we have in the YA age range. It would not be the same if it wasn't for the success of Twilight. I'm sorry, say what you will, this book has influenced literature for years and years to come. There's just something so innately special about this series. I don't know what it is, but there's just something about Twilight where you will never forget all of the feelings that you felt while reading it for the first time and while seeing the movies for the first time and talking about it with your friends. There is just so much nostalgia attached to this story, and I don't think this will ever leave my favorites list, to be honest. I will be a Twihard forever, and I am so proud of it. At number 8 on my list of all-time favorite series is the Selection series by Kiera Cass. Despite this book being on my favorites list, I still have not read book 5, The Crown. Personally, I like to consider the Selection series a trilogy and The Heir and The Crown a separate series. I know they're considered the same series, but it's really hard for me to group them totally together. So when I talk about the Selection series, I'm just talking about the first 3 in the book that I consider to be a trilogy. I feel like some people might be shocked that this is on my list because I feel like everyone on BookTube hates America, and I am just one of the very strange few that don't hate her, and I love America despite all of her annoying tendencies. I just think the Selection series was so much fun. Like, when I first read it, I was just in a point in my life where I really needed something fun, and although like I feel like it is a book like Twilight where like it's just mostly known and loved for its entertainment purposes, I do feel like this is a very deep book, and there is a lot about politics in it and being independent and individual, and there are just so many qualities about these characters that I enjoy in addition to the series being so funny and lighthearted. The Selection is so great. The Selection is honestly just like fun. Like, people forget a lot of times that reading can just be fun, and it doesn't always have to be intellectual and life-changing. Like, reading is a hobby, and I want my hobbies to be full of entertainment and enjoyment, and that's what the Selection is chock full of. Number 7 on my list is the Lunar Chronicles series by Marissa Meyer. What I really love about the Lunar Chronicles is it was really my first exposure to the science fiction genre. You know, throughout childhood, I was always really invested in like alien stories and like watching UFO sightings on YouTube and documentaries and stuff. So like I knew what sci-fi was, but I read this as I was just firstly getting into the genre of YA and BookTube, and so this was the first science fiction novel I ever picked up, and it just had such an impact on me. I'm so sentimental, so like a lot of these books are like the first books that I have read on BookTube, and when I had started reading, like there's just something about first books that I read in a genre and first books I read in a series that are just so dear to me, and I feel like a lot of what I have to do with loving the Lunar Chronicles series is for its sentimentalness, sentimentality. How am I a booktuber who reads all of these words every day and I don't know the correct tense of that? Whatever it is, I love the Lunar Chronicles so much. This is another series that I feel is very complex and just has so much going into it. I mean, we have 4 totally different characters told in 4 totally different settings that somehow all come together and are still related and pretty true to the fairy tale that inspired them. This is also the first of retellings that I have ever read, and I am a lover of retellings, although I haven't read many, and I just feel like Marissa Meyer does so well with adapting something that is so classic, like the story of Cinderella, and turning it into something totally new and putting it into a totally new world. And honestly, I'm just impressed by this series. I think that's also what it has to do with a lot of, I was just blown away by the capability that Marissa Meyer had to turn the story to life, and it's fantastic. If you haven't read the Lunar Chronicles, but you're a fan of science fiction or just a fan of anything, because I feel like there are some dystopian elements to it. That's how I originally viewed it, because I was just getting out of my dystopian craze into my sci-fi craze while reading this book. So I feel like there are a lot of like fantasy dystopian elements to it. So if that's something that you like, the Lunar Chronicles would be the perfect fit for you. I just also love that the books are so big and there's just so much put into them. I'm just, the Lunar Chronicles, man. How do you not love the Lunar Chronicles? Speaking of my dystopian craze, number 6 on my list is The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. The way I always like to sum up why I love The Darkest Minds so much is Alexandra Bracken was the first and only author to make me cry at the use of a single word, and I don't know if you guys know what word I'm talking about, but it's a color and it is stated as like just the one word in Never Fade, so maybe you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, I wouldn't be surprised because that's super big. I feel like The Darkest Minds is another series that is just very complex and deep, and I feel like this is a very, very heavy story. I feel like this story plays into a lot of the darker elements of humanity, and honestly, for a debut series, I think Alexandra Bracken is so phenomenal for coming up with such an ingenious tale, like right off the bat as trying to be a published author. She's also like the sweetest woman in the world, but that's another story for another day. The Darkest Minds is another series that just totally took over my life. All I wanted to do was read these books and continually become invested in these characters. I also feel that In the Afterlight is honestly one of the best conclusions I have ever read. I feel like it incorporated everything a conclusion needs to have, and for the most part it totally summed up everything I wanted from it. There are books that hook you for the writing, there are books that hook you for the characters, and there are books that hook you for the plot, and The Darkest Minds hooked me for each and every one of them, and I can really appreciate that, and I think it's honestly one of the best YA dystopians that have ever been written. I love Alexandra Bracken, I love The Darkest Minds. I heard we got a director for the movie, so I hope that goes so well, because as soon as I finished the series, I was like, this would make the perfect movie. So I'm really excited for that. I'm so happy for Alexandra Bracken for all of the success she's gotten from The Darkest Minds, and this is definitely a series I will always be referring to in the future when I want that perfect dystopian kick. Now we get into the top 5 favorite series of all time, and like I said, I feel like those last 5 that I mentioned can easily be swapped out, or they can change order depending on my mood, but I feel like these 5 will always stay as the top 5, so I'm excited to share them to you guys. Number 5 on the list is The Dark Artifices by Cassandra Clare. That is not this book. This is The Infernal Devices. What even just happened there? Number 5 is The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. Jesus, I have this author's handwriting tattooed on me and I can't even remember the title of her books. I don't know if any of you have been watching my channel for a long time, but if you haven't, I will tell you the story of how I've come to love the dark art. I just did it again. What is wrong with me? So basically, concerning The Infernal Devices, I had first read these books immediately after reading the Mortal Instruments series 4 times in a row. So I was very invested in the Mortal Instruments from the start, as you can tell, and we will talk about that later, of course. But one of the first real series I had read after just being totally invested in the Mortal Instruments series and those characters and that world was The Infernal Devices. And so my problem with The Infernal Devices essentially was that it wasn't the Mortal Instruments. That is a very, very juvenile answer, and I was obviously very immature in the way that I was viewing things at that time in my life, but I've made peace with it now. So for the longest time, I hated these books, to be honest. I was so bitter. There was no Jace Wayland, and it just wasn't the Mortal Instruments, and all I wanted was the Mortal Instruments. Like, I think I just wanted a sequel series of all of the Mortal Instruments characters, and that's not what I got. So like I said, 17 years old, stupid little Emma. I rated all of these like 2 to 1 star on Goodreads at first. I was not a fan of it, and I was not in the right mindset to enjoy them. So for a very long time, I hated them. In September, I think it was, of 2015, I had reread them. I was like, I'm going to give this another shot because I feel like Cassandra Clare deserves it. I feel like I have the potential to like it, and I feel like I'm finally in the right state to read and love these books. And so I did, and I loved them. I had the best time rereading this series, and I think if there's anything that you should take away from that experience, it's if you feel that there is a book that you have read and you did not like it at first, it just did not live up to the hype for you, but you truly feel like in your gut and your heart that you will be able to enjoy it, I would absolutely recommend rereading it at a later date, whether it is like a year or two later like me, or if you need to wait 5 years. I don't think anyone should ever totally cut anything out just by first experience, because I don't know where I'd be right now if I didn't love The Infernal Devices as much as I do right now. Obviously, The Infernal Devices is noted for its love triangle, and I feel like I'm going on a very, very long spiel about this one book, so I'm really sorry about that. But I hated the love triangle so much when I first read it, and it was one of my biggest problems with it, and after rereading it, I love this love triangle, and everything makes more sense now, and I'm in such a different mindset after reading it, and I'm so happy I gave it a second chance, and I definitely think The Infernal Devices will always stay on my top 5 favorite series of all time. Number 4 on my list of favorite series of all time is the Dark Artifices series by Cassandra Clare. Obviously, this is the only one on here that only has 1 book out, but I am pretty confident it will always stay at number 4 on my list. I cannot explain to you how much I loved Lady Midnight. This is honestly by far my favorite first book in a series ever, and I don't know how any series will ever be able to beat it for me. I finished Lady Midnight, and my first thought was, I don't want to say I like it more than the Mortal Instruments, but I'm still in that mindset where I'm terrified of saying that, so it's never gonna leave my mouth, but it's real close, guys. It's like so close I'm terrified and I'm questioning my identity. I'm just so proud of Cassandra Clare for this book. I mean, like, I adore her so much and I'm so supportive of her, but she's just one of those authors that her writing just improves in every single aspect with every book she publishes, and Lady Midnight is by far her favorite work, even though I do prefer the Mortal Instruments, obviously. I feel like the plot of this book is miles upon miles above her other works, and I love that she is growing so much, and I'm in like a happy state right now because I'm talking about Cassandra Clare and I love her books. My mom is currently reading Lady Midnight, so I'm also in Lady Midnight mode because she keeps coming into my room to talk to me about it. I am utterly impressed. I am awestruck by how fantastic this book was, and there is not a doubt in my mind that I will love this series so much. It's at the point where I am as in love with this series almost as much as I am with the Mortal Instruments series, and I think that's really exciting that I get to grow with my favorite author. And so, Lady Midnight, guys, if you haven't finished the Shadowhunter Chronicles, please do, and just please read Lady Midnight. Your life will be changed, and you will never go back after this book, I promise. Now we get to number 3 on my list, which is the Vampire Academy series by Rochelle Mead. If you have been on my channel for about a year now, you probably are aware of my obsession with Vampire Academy. I cannot explain to you I swear my life has been turned completely upside down since finishing this series a year ago. If you had followed me on Snapchat or Twitter or YouTube at that point, like, I don't know how you dealt with me because I was a mess all the time. I literally live Snapchatted all of my reactions to everything that happened in this series just because I couldn't keep it inside of myself because it just evoked that much emotion from me. While I feel like it's comparable to Twilight in the fact that I don't feel like it's the most deep book out there, and I think it is one of those books that is mostly for enjoyment and entertainment purposes, just everything that happens out of this book is just I can't even process it because just so much happens and it's so unexpected, and everything that happens is mind-boggling, and I'm just saying the same thing in 5 different ways because I just don't know how to explain to you that this series is insanity. I feel like people hate on Vampire Academy because it is a little more juvenile, and I do have problems with this book. Like, every single series on here, while I love all of them, there are definitely a lot of problems I have with most of them. I can't explain to you, like, how much I love this book. I think the only way to compare my reading experience with Vampire Academy was I hadn't felt like this since I had read The Mortal Instruments for the first time, and I think that's just so crazy, just thinking about that side-by-side comparison of how obsessed I was at both of these and how much they took over my life. It really says something. I'm currently reading the last book in the spin-off series, Bloodlines, and I am so enthralled by this world. Again, I am a very plot-based reader, as I'm sure you can tell by a lot of the books that I picked. They're mostly famous for their plots, and so I think the plot of Vampire Academy is so unlike anything else out there, and that's why I love it so much. If you were ever a fan of Twilight or anything with vampires or paranormal or supernatural or fantasy, urban fantasy, how have you not read Vampire Academy? It's a classic. It's honestly when we're like old and we're 70 years old and we're talking about what was like classic at the time when we were young, like Vampire Academy is going to be a classic YA fantasy at this point, just because it's so good. It's never going to get old, and every time I think about it, I just feel that same sense of nostalgia as when I was reading it for the first time. Then we get to number 2 on my list of all-time favorite series, which is Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling. This one obviously has to be as high up as possible on this list. I went through a lot of internal struggle when placing this book because for all of my life, Harry Potter was always number 1 and nothing was ever going to be Harry Potter. But when I had read The Mortal Instruments, which is obviously number 1, like this wasn't a surprise to anyone. If you clicked on this video, you knew that Mortal Instruments was going to be my number 1 favorite series of all time. But we're talking about Harry Potter now, so let's get back on track. I had gone through so much conflict in putting this at number 2 because I was like, how can I betray Harry Potter? Like, Harry Potter was my childhood. Harry Potter got me into reading. It made me a better person. It's become a part of me. Like, I don't know who I am without Harry Potter, and it's a little pathetic, but we're just gonna, you guys know what I mean. We're all readers here. But I do feel like I'm much happier with the way I view Harry Potter now as an adult compared to how I viewed it as a child, because I feel like all throughout my life I had used Harry Potter as this crutch, as this escape, and it's stopped being something I turn to, and it is now honestly just a part of me, and I have accepted that Harry Potter is like a piece of me in my heart, and I'm never going to be separated from it. I mean, I have a Harry Potter shelf. I'm planning on collecting up to 5 at the minimum editions of this series. I just can't even express the words that it would take to tell you why I love Harry Potter so much. That would be like an hour-long video. I have read the Harry Potter series more times than I can count. I've honestly lost count of how many times I've read it. It is somewhere in between 12 and 17 because I read it every single summer since sometime in elementary school. And so throughout that, and reading it twice a year, sometimes up to 3 or 4 times a year, I've just lost count of how many times I've read it. I read the first book in French. I don't even know French that well despite taking it for 5 years, but I read it because it's Harry Potter. I have a tattoo. I'm planning on getting another Harry Potter tattoo. If I've lost count of how many times I've read the books, I have definitely lost count of how many times I have watched the movies, because in high school I used to watch 4 Harry Potter movies a day, and that is not an exaggeration. I would legitimately watch 1 through 4, and then I would watch 4 through 8, and then I would reverse it and do 1 through 4 the next day. Like, this is not an exaggeration, and I still rewatch them all the time. I went through a spell about 2 months ago where all I did was rewatch the Harry Potter movies over and over and over and over and over again for 2 months. I didn't watch any TV. I only watched Harry Potter. I have watched all of the Harry Potter musicals more times than I can count. I can probably recite the entire play for you right now if I really wanted to. I am just so enveloped by the story and this world that it's like really hard for me to accept that it's totally fictional, just because it has become such a prominent part of my life. And this is another book that I'm just going on about, but I don't even care because it's Harry freaking Potter. There are no words on this earth to describe how much Harry Potter means to me and how much I will love it for the rest of my life. There will just never be a time in my life where I don't love Harry Potter as much as I do now, and I think that's a really great thing that I'm able to have something that has meant so much to me for the past decade and it will be a part of me for decades to come. And I'm getting a little emotional right now, so I think I'm done talking about Harry Potter. But it is just my absolute life, and I'm so blessed to have experienced the story. And now now we are up to number 1 on my list of favorite series of all time, and this is probably really anticlimactic because I think anyone who has clicked on this video knows what number 1 is. But of course, it is the wonderful Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare. Does that even just describe it for you? Just that noise that came out when I tried to think of how to start explaining to you why this is my favorite series of all time. I guess I can get a little emotional for a minute because I'm still in like crying Harry Potter mode. I had first found out about the Mortal Instruments series at the roughest time in my life, and I say that with sincerity. I mean, I've been anorexic since I was 11 years old and depressed since I was 13, and I've suffered from a lot of mental illness, and even all of that doesn't compare to the loneliness I felt my senior year of high school. I was just in such a rough place and I could not escape from any of it, and I'm getting a little anxious just thinking about that experience. But basically, I had gone to the movies and I had let my boyfriend choose what movie he wanted to see, and he chose The Mortal Instruments. And so we went to see the movie. I've told the story a million times. I watched the movie, fell in love, read the books. You guys know that whole spiel. And so the Mortal Instruments series gave me a way to express myself. Like Harry Potter, I kind of used it as a crutch, and through these words and through this story and through these characters, I was able to become the person I have always wanted to be, and not even the person I was able to be. Like, who I am today always seemed unattainable until I read this series. And I think that might be weird to say because this is a fictional story set in a fantasy world with characters that don't exist, but I can say with sincerity that I would not be the person I am today had I not read this series. The Mortal Instruments just taught me that it was okay to be myself, and it was okay to be interested in things that other people weren't interested in, and like I should embrace that I love these things and not just hide them away. The Mortal Instruments is so much more than a story to me. Not only did it save me from a deep pit of depression, it honestly saved me from being a person I didn't want to become, and I am just forever indebted to this series. And I'm here talking about myself. I'm not even talking about the book that we're meant to be talking about. Let me tell you about the Mortal Instruments series. This series is fantastic. Of course it has its flaws, and I love pointing out its flaws. I love just doing in-depth discussions on the Mortal Instruments series, but there is just so much good in it, and I feel like it does have those deep aspects but also incorporates all of the entertaining things I love about reading. If you have not read the Mortal Instruments series, first of all, how do you watch my channel? Please explain to me, how do you sit through 20-minute videos of me talking about the Mortal Instruments if you haven't read this series? Second of all, you really should, because they are fantastic, and I feel like anyone I recommend this book to, I feel like I'm giving them a piece of my soul, honestly. So if you haven't read the Mortal Instruments, I would 10 out of 10 recommend it. I feel like I've kind of calmed down my excitement because I'm just in this mindset of calmness next to this book when thinking about how much it means to me and how it has turned me into this person. I'm just at peace because of this book, and I think that's the best thing that any piece of literature could really give you. So that is it for my list of my favorite series of all time. I'm sorry that was very long. We had a lot of books to talk about, and I clearly had a lot to say about a lot of them, but I love each of these books so, so much. And of course, in a few years when more books come out and I read more books, some things on this list might change, but I'm pretty confident that where I am in my life right now and what I'm into and what I'm liking and who I am, that these are the 10 stories that have really stuck with me and that really do rise above all at the moment. So I would love to know some of your favorite series, whether you want to leave me all 10, if you want to leave me one. I just really would love to know, and if we have any in common, I would definitely love to know if we share some of the same all-time favorite series. And again, please let me know if there are any favorites videos that you would like to see from me that are similar to this video. But that is it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon for a new video. Bye!